Additional special operations forces are being sent to battle ISIS in Iraq. Meanwhile, 200 troops will be sent to the region within the next few weeks. Joining us right now is the Director of Emerging Market Strategy at Eurasia Group, Alexander Kliment. Good to see you, Alex. Thanks so much for joining us. So what's your take in terms of the whole Russia component of this, U.S.-Russia relations in the face of basically Putin pushing America out of the way in Syria?
Right, yeah. Well, look, I think of the many competing objectives and aims in Syria, none is more consequential than the difference of opinion between Russia and the United States about how to deal with ISIS, right? Both countries agree that ISIS is a threat. Both countries agree that ISIS should be dealt with, but they disagree on what the strategy for doing that is, right? The Americans say in order to deal with ISIS, you have to remove Bashar al-Assad first because his brutality pushes people into the arms of ISIS. Yeah. The Russians say, well, hold on a second. If you're going to remove ISIS...
They're backing him.
You need... Well, they're backing him, for, which I'll get to in a second, but their view is that in order to deal with ISIS, you need to strengthen Assad, because if you remove ISIS from Syrian territory, who's going to rule that territory? So the Russians are actually working hard to back Assad to present a sort of fait accompli in which the option for the West is either Assad runs Syria or ISIS runs Syria. So there's a difference of opinion. Both sides are right? I mean, the Americans are right that Sunni grievances lead to, ISIS preys on Sunni grievances, but the Russians are right that ISIS thrives in places where there's a vacuum of state power. We've seen this in Iraq, we've seen this in Syria, we've seen this in Libya, we've seen this in Yemen. So that kind of conflicting sort of philosophical approach to this problem, I think, is playing out on the ground.
What does it mean if they can't come together on this?
What do you do then? What's the end game?
Well,
because if you cut a deal with Putin, he's going to want to extract something from you, something that's probably going to cost you a lot more down the road.
Well, I think you're exactly right that Putin is using Russia's role in Syria to get something, and that thing is to weaken the EU sanctions against Russia. Right? Russia's economy is going to contract close to 4% this year. Putin's no idiot; he understands that, and he is trying to repair that relationship with Europe. Why? Because he knows that for the Europeans, the refugee crisis is the single most important political challenge. That's true at the EU level, and it's true at the country level in Europe. He knows the Europeans need a deal on Syria, and he's the guy who can bring it home for them.
Doesn't Vladimir Putin also have longer-term goals, which is, number one, to reestablish a longer-term strategic presence in Syria and the broader Middle East, also to chip away at NATO, which is what the whole conflict with Turkey now is all about, but also ultimately to gain control of the global oil supply. With all of the new pipelines being built through the region, Vladimir Putin wants a hand in that, doesn't he?
I think he does, but I think the immediate aim is really about repairing that economic relationship with Europe, right? Yes, Russia has an interest in having a seat at the table on a key region of the world, and it's a geopolitical sort of feather in his cap. But I think the real issue is that he's been very clear that he wants to use that Syria leverage to repair the economic relationship with Europe, because that is the primary challenge for Russia right now.
It sounds like we're backing those intentions. Why don't we just let ISIS take out Assad, or we take him out, and then we eviscerate ISIS?
Well, you can eviscerate ISIS, but to do that, you need to commit large numbers of ground troops. I think that's clear.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is something for which there is still neither strong public support or a strong strategy, right?
No strategy.
I mean, our troops can certainly take out ISIS. The question is, what next? Right? The U.S. has been very good at taking territory from people, but it's not been so good at being an occupying nation-building force, right? That's the legacy of the first Iraq war.
And the president does not want any casualties. So he wants to do airstrikes because he figures that that's not impacting casualties.
Well, the problem is that then you get casualties on the other side, so-called collateral damage, which also helps ISIS recruitment.
Alex, good to have your insights. Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Alex Kliment joining us, Eurasia Group. Be right back.